If you're going to live a life that's pleasing to the Lord, then you've got to live a life that's seeking to do His will. But if you're going to live a life seeking to do His will, then you have to know how to discern the will of God. We've talked about yesterday that one of the great prerequisites for discerning the will of God is having a heart that says, Lord, whatever you want me to do, that's what I want to do. Now, what is it? George Mueller was a British evangelist who lived in the 1800s. He was known as a man of great faith. And one of the secrets to his great faith was Mueller knew how to discern the will of God. George Mueller said this about discovering God's will. He says, I seek at the beginning to get my heart into such a state that it has no will of its own in regard to any given matter. 9/10 of the trouble with people generally is just here. 9/10 of the difficulty are overcome when our hearts are ready to do the Lord's will, whatever that may be. When one is truly in this state, it is usually but a little way to the knowledge of what His will is. So it begins with a yielded heart. The second prerequisite of discerning God's will is faith. The Bible says in James chapter 1, verse 5 to 7, if anyone is lacking wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without reprimand, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without doubting. For the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea blown and tossed around by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. So God says, if you want to have wisdom, then ask me for it. But ask believing I'm going to give it to you. Now, what is wisdom? Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 17 says, be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but wise. Verse 17 says, not as foolish, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. So wisdom is understanding God's will for you in any specific situation that you're in. So he says, if you want to know what my specific will is for you in whatever situation you're in, ask me, but believe I'm going to give it to you. Now, God's still going to take you through a process of discovering His will, but as you go through that process, He wants you to have a will yielded to Him and a heart believing He's going to show you what His will is.